Well, email is the most effective way to generate inbound leads for B2B companies. I mean, if you have the list, so or not the list, but I mean, if the prospects are out there for what you're offering and who you're offering it to, so when you dig in and you get into a system, and I put clients on Apollo, and of course, there's 5 different moving parts other than that to connect it all together to be able to deliver and get to the inbox and get the volume. But when you dig into, say, Apollo, just like Zoom Info, you've got to figure out how to build that list of companies using a variety of different criteria, from industry and keywords to employee count to do they have this number of employees in a specific department to do they have are they using certain kinds of software, and then of course you're pegging the titles of the people that you want to reach out to. So you got to build you've got to build a list, and the way I build it, I need to see tens of thousands of, you have 50 million contacts in the United States, say in either of those platforms. You need to have, tens of thousands to justify doing a system like I build. Most of my clients are going to have 100 and something thousand to over, a million or even 2 million. But anyway, you got to have the prospect list. So you can build a list out that's at least a decent size to justify the whole system, right? But beyond that, right, taking that aside for a second, which almost everyone does if they're covering nationwide, it's not really an issue. But what you need to do is you got 4 main things you got to have to make it like run like a machine. Turn it on, run it on autopilot, and generate leads like crazy. You got to have 4 things. You got to have the technical setup. You've got to have the prospect list, like we discussed. That's the second thing. Third thing is the right format for your emails. And then the fourth thing is you need to have the right kind of messaging and call to action. Okay. So when we talk about the technical setup side, you need a dedicated email domain, email address, and inbox. You can't be emailing or should not be emailing from your main domain ever. You've got to set up the DNS settings. That includes SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, but there's other things that go into the strings of code we have to do in DNS settings. You've got to set up and run domain reputation management that's running at a very high level. There's a lot of services out there that are offering that kind of thing now, but they're not at a high enough level to strengthen or keep the health of the domain high. Got to do that the right way, and that's pretty involved. You've got to run 2 email APIs, and that's what's actually sending the emails. You got to have the campaign management system and the prospect list, which when I put client systems together, they're on the same system. And then the email copywriting itself. So you got to have the technical setup of all of those things connected, working correctly, and all that stuff. So so you got that. You got to have the prospect list. So again, we talked about that. You're going after individual people. So you've got titles of people, types of companies, by industry, by keyword, by number of employees, like so size, all those kinds of things. So you got to have the prospect list. So that's the second thing. A good targeted prospect list, because you don't want to be emailing people that aren't even remotely a possible lead, because you want people to engage with your email, even if it's an unsubscribe, but you do want people to engage with your email, because that keeps the health of the domain high and keeps the IP strength and everything there, right? So you have that format of emails. Needs to be text, 100% text. A lot of people, when you talk to businesses and they think of email marketing, they think of MailChimp, they think of Constant Contact. Those systems are built, number one, not to send huge volume, right? They can if you have the list, but they want you to have opt-in and all that stuff. So that's, but you have, their emails are graphical, they're advertisements. So you're sending advertisements from your company to a group of people. That's not the same as one-to-one email engagement, right? So your format should be 100% text. That's because that's a natural format for a person-to-person email. If I'm going to send you an email and ask if you have a pain point, would I send you a graphical email, or would I just send you something in text? I'd send you a text email. So you want your email to be 100% text. So that's the third thing. Format of email must be text. The fourth thing is message and call to action. So this is one where a lot of companies kind of miss the mark. They go to write, even if they're going to do text-based emails, they write an email That's kind of like an advertisement or a bit of a squeeze page or a sales page kind of thing. But would you do that when you make a cold call? Because you want your cold email to replicate a cold call. You just can't ask questions on an email, but you're going to generate far more leads, and it has a bunch of different advantages over calling. But calling, you have the advantage that you can gather intel and ask questions and all that stuff. But set that aside. We want the email to replicate a cold call, which means we are calling, we are asking, hey, do you have this pain point? If you do, I can help you solve it. Here's what I want you to do next. And you're trying to elicit a reply. You're asking them to raise their hand and say, yes, I am the decision maker or a decision maker in that process. And yes, go ahead and send me over that information, whatever it is, to get them to reply. Now you've got an inbound lead, right? Now you can take that lead and you go chase after them. But in the process, I recommend for clients, not only would you do that, but your first thing is you'd reply to them with the thing you said you'd send, and then a call to action to jump on a call. Because most B2B is going to end up on a call of some kind, of scheduled call. So you're going to give them a Calendly, for example. That's the final piece, right? The message has to be with a call to action. So it's a personalized email, one-to-one, asking if they have a pain point with the call to action to reply. That is the final piece of the puzzle, and probably one of the things I see a lot of companies miss, even VPs of marketing and sales, because they naturally, and it's not their fault, they naturally think I'm writing an email, so I need to write an email. But the correct way to actually formulate an email for that kind of outreach is to actually start with audio. And what would you say on a call? Like if you had a 15-second elevator speech or 10, and you're going to pitch someone and say, hey, I want to give you my brochure, right? What would you say, right? That kind of formula is what we want to do in that email. So again, if you go back to them, you've got to have the technical setup for email marketing to send serious volume and get it delivered, get it open, get response, a lot of leads. You've got to have a targeted prospect list. You've got to have the right format, and you've got to have messaging and call to action that's going to drive response, right? Drive replies. You do those things, email marketing is a lead generation machine. It is the best medium. Hands down, nothing touches it. Just hands down. It's not even close.